Hello guys, welcome back to another HTML tutorial session. Now in this tutorial we are going to open our HTML file with the Visual Studio Code text editor, and also we are going to have a look at the HTML structure and also tag and an element. So without wasting much time, let's dive in. Okay guys, so before we start writing our HTML code, we have to first of all create a folder to store our code. So I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop, or you can preferably create it anywhere you want as far as you can access it easily. So I'm going to create mine on my desktop. So right click, new, and then folder. So you name your folder. I'm going to name my Codetopia. Alright, so now after creating your folder, we have to launch the folder in our text editor, which is Visual Studio Code. So to do that, you have to first of all launch Visual Studio. Alright, so after launching Visual Studio, we have to open our folder in Visual Studio. So to do that, you have to go to File. So you go to File and then you choose Open Folder. You can preferably do with the shortcut, but you just click on open folder. It's going to do the same job for you. Alright, so now as you can see, a pop-up dialog box appears. So from here you have to navigate to the folder you created, and as you all saw, I created mine in my desktop directory. So I have to navigate to my desktop directory, which is on my left pane here. So as you can see, desktop. So I click on desktop, and then here's my folder, Codetopia. Alright, so all what I have to do is I have to double click on it and then click on select folder. Alright, congratulations, you've launched your folder in Visual Studio. So as you can see, this is my folder. As you can see, Codetopia. Welcome, Codetopia Visual Studio Code. Alright, so the next thing we have to do is we have to create a file in the folder. So let me show you something very quickly. So if I minimize this to my right, and I launch the Codetopia folder, let me send this also to my left. Alright, so now I want to prove something to you. Any changes we make to the Codetopia folder in our Visual Studio will reflect in the original Codetopia folder. So now let's create a file in our Codetopia folder. So you have to click on this button which says new file. So you click on new file, and then it gives you the option to name your file. So I'm going to name my, you can give it any name you want, but I'm going to name my index. So index. So after giving your file a name, don't forget the extension, the HTML extension, which is the .html or .htm. So after writing index, then you bring .html and then you press enter. So now as you can see here, I have my folder here. Now let me delete it and create again. So when I delete, as you can see, it's gone. So let me create it again. So you click on new file and then you create your file. Now enter. As you can see, it appears here. So this is to prove to you that any changes we make in our Visual Studio Code text editor, it will also reflect, that change will also reflect in our Codetopia original folder. So see you in the next session, guys. Now to begin with our HTML code, we first of all need the HTML structure, which we saw in our previous video. Alright, so the first thing you need for the HTML structure is the declarative statement, which tells the browser the right version of HTML you are using, or the version of HTML you are using, which is HTML5 in this case. Alright, so to To declare your statement, you have to bring your less than sign and exclamation mark. Now when you see this, you can click on it or you can press enter and it automatically completes it for you. Alright, so now after the declarative statement, the next thing we need is our HTML root element. Our HTML root element. So you bring your less than sign, HTML, and then your greater than sign. It automatically closes. So you see, we are not doing the manual closing of tags here. It automatically closes, or it is doing the auto completion for us. Alright, so now the next thing we need to do is we need to bring in our head element and our body element, which is nested in the HTML root element. So we need our head element, close. All right, and the next thing we need is our body element, which comes right after the head element. So you press enter and then you bring your body element, then you close. All right, so now this is the basic HTML structure. So as you can see, we first brought our declarative statement and then our HTML root element, and then after that we nested two elements in there in our HTML element, which is the head element and the body element. So see you in the next session. We are going to talk about tags. Okay, so now before we take or have a look at tags, now I want to show you something very quickly. Now we are going to launch our web browser with an extension called Live Server. It will save us from launching our website manually, going to the HTML file and then right clicking on it and then choosing open with and then web browser. That's a lot. So we are going to be using the extension. Now if you don't have that extension, I'm going to leave a link to that in the description. You have to check that out before you continue with this. Alright, so now I will assume you have your extension installed. So all what you have to do is go to file and then locate preference. Now from the preference menu, you choose settings. Now in the settings area, you search for live server. Now in the live server area, you look for custom browser. Now there it is. So now we have to choose the browser we want to launch our website in automatically. So you just have to click on this down pointing arrow and then you choose the browser you want. I'm going to choose Chrome in this case. So you choose the browser you want. I recommend you to choose Chrome or Firefox, and then after that you close your settings, go back to your HTML code, right click, and then you can find open with live server here. So just click on it, and as you can see, our browser opens automatically. So now let's talk about tags. Now before we talk about tags, I want to show you something. There's a tool called developer tool. Now if you are in Chrome, you just have to invoke it with Control Shift and I. Now if you're on Mac, you just have to use Command Option and I. Okay, so now as you can see here, we have the elements and then the console tab. There are more tabs, but just go to the elements tab and then you can see the HTML structure in there. Alright, so it's nothing strange. Alright, so now tags come in pairs. We have the opening tag and the closing tag. Since HTML is a language that uses markup to identify contents or to help the browser to render contents appropriately. So if we want to represent any form of content in our web browser, we have to use the appropriate and right tags for that. So as you can see here, in the head, that's where we have all the title, and we have all the non-visual aspects of your website. So if you want to give like a title to your website, you have to use the title tag. You can't use the paragraph tag because it won't work. Now let's try that. If I want to give a title to my website, and then I nest it in between the paragraph tag. Now let's see whether that will work. So maybe I want to give my title code. Now when I save, you can see that I placed the paragraph in the head, but my web browser showed it in the body. Why? Because I'm using the wrong tag for the title. If you want to give a title to your website, then you have to use the title tag. Now when I save, my web browser will automatically reload. So when I save, Control S. Alright, so as you can see, the code leaves the body and then goes to the title in the head. Nice, right? So you can't just wake up and then start coding in HTML. You have to know the right tags for the right content you want to represent on your website. So if you want to give a heading to your website, now it has to go in the body, because we learned that the body is where all the visible part of your website is. You understand? So you can't, anything you want to display on your website should be in the body open and close tag. So if I want to represent a heading and I mistakenly drop that in my head, so H1, that's the bigger heading, so H1, I type learning and I save. Now you can see I placed that in the head, but my browser showed it in the body. Why? Because you can't use the heading in the head. You have to use it in the body because you want to display it on your website. It is a visible part of your website, so you just have to represent that in your body. So you have to use the appropriate tag for the right content. So if I want to represent a paragraph, I have to use the paragraph tag, the open and close tag. Now the tags have some unique identifiers, which is the greater than and the less than. Now the difference is that with the opening tag, the greater than and the less than doesn't have any slash in there. So you just have the less than, you have the name of your tag, which is the H1, and then you have the greater than sign. You bring your content. Now when you are closing it, when you are closing the tag, you have to bring a forward slash. So you bring your less than sign, and then you bring a forward slash before the tag name, then you close it with your greater than sign. So basically these are tags. They are like HTML keywords that help HTML to communicate with the web browser. So with the appropriate usage of tags, our web browser will be able to render our content appropriately. So see you in the next session. We are going to talk about elements. Okay, so when we mention an element in HTML, we are basically talking about the opening tag, the closing tag, and the content in the two tags, which is the opening and the closing tag. So for example, you can see we have an HTML element here. Now let me quickly explain it to you. Now this is called the HTML root element because it is the root of our HTML document after the doc type declaration. And as I said, the doc type declaration is not a tag, so it is not an element. So the element starts from this HTML that we are seeing. So we say this is the HTML root element. So because that's the base of our HTML document. So now it is called an element because we have the opening tag here, we have the closing tag, and then in between the opening and the closing tag we have some contents, which is the head element and the body element. Now when you take the body element, for instance, we also have the opening tag, the closing tag, and then in between we have a content, which is the title element. Now when you take the title element, we have the opening tag, we have the closing tag, and we also have some content in there. So you are getting it now, right? All right, so now when you take the h1 element, we have the h1 opening tag, we have the h1 closing tag, and we have the content between. So when we talk about elements, we are simply talking about the opening tag, the content, and the closing tag. That's element. And then you can say the element is made up of an opening tag, a closing tag, and a content. And tags are like keywords in HTML that helps us to render content appropriately in our web browser. So if you want to represent a paragraph, you have to use the paragraph tags. If you want to represent a header or a heading, you have to use the heading tags. If you want to use an image, you have to use the image tag and all that. So see you in the next video. I'm going to leave a link to some of the cool elements you can learn about in the description, so check that out. So see you in the next video, and always remember to never give up coding.